Hola, ¿cómo están? Gonza, Vodkito por acá. Bueno, bienvenidos a otro Insight, entre comillas, porque esta vez lo que subieron o lo que trae acá Jared, que está de fondo, está con frío, está igual que yo, nos trajo un Journey to 4.0, ¿no? Como que el camino, el viaje hacia Pyro, que es el 4.0. No es un Insight, pero es un Insight, porque nos van a mostrar un poco de cosas de lo que se viene. Así que nada, hoy nos acompaña Mauro. Bienvenido, Mauro. ¿Cómo andáis?
Hola, hola.
Recuerden, hoy me dijo Mauro, ojo esta nueva data. Mauro va a empezar a streamear todos los sábados con camarita y todo, ¿eh? Así que después le dejo abajo en la descripción, le dejo el link del Twitch de Maureira. Bueno, vamos a darle play, a ver qué nos dice Jared.
Week, it's another Journey to 4.0 special, where we jump
Ah, le pongo subtítulo, ¿no? Porque si no... Subtítulos. Traducir automáticamente. Español. Che, tiene que aprender inglés, loco, ¿no? Vamos.
farther ahead and take a look at work scheduled to make its persistent universe debut in the upcoming 4.x branch of
Hola,
release.
Micro, ¿cómo andás?
And this week, we're proud to bring Star Citizen art director Ian Leyland back to share with us a first look inside the buildings of Star Citizen's landing zones.
Ok. Nos van a mostrar el interior de donde aterrizamos en los lugares.
So those are the thing we've always wanted to do, you know, because of, you know, we've had cities in the game for a while. We have many cities, we have many buildings.
Okay.
Therefore, we could have many interiors. It's a perfect opportunity to put in a lot of play space. Now, with the players flying around these buildings, they've been largely urban landscapes, fairly uninteractable. You know, we've done a few landing pads to get the players in and out there, but really the real good stuff was on the inside. So up until now, we've been on the outside wondering about the inside, and today we're going to talk about the inside.
¿Cómo el inside?
Looking outside.
Es decir, nos van a hablar un poco de los edificios y estructuras, pero de adentro, como que el interior, no sé qué serán los departamentos,
El interior de los edificios.
pero medio al pedo, ¿no?
No, está bueno. A ver, vos dejás tu nave ahí, aterrizás, guardás, te vas a tu casa y te vas a dormir.
No,
Para
estaría...
cerrar la partida, digamos.
Ah, a mí me encantaría que poder comprar un apartamento y decorarlo con lo que vos quieras. Y tenerlo ahí, un departamentito en Lorville, un departamentito en Área 18, en Microtech, o más conocido como Microtech. A ver.
All right, so with building interiors, the way in which we approach the concept development, now this was just a pure blue sky ideation phase, and the idea was to create inspirational material to use that as a content to inspire conversations, to find out what do we want to do for the game, what is cool for the game,
A ver.
and use that as the initial springboard for the conversation. So what we'll be looking through here is a presentation of blue sky ideation,
A ver. Dale, pelado.
primarily used as a springboard to start conversations with Chris, with the design director, and the game director to understand.
¿Sabes la gente? ¿Vos te pensás que gente no pagaría tener un apartamento en alguna ciudad, no sé, $100, $200 o $500? Miles.
What do we want to put in the game? What could be cool for the game? And we use that as that initial inspiration point. So when we're talking about building interiors, how could we start to break that down? So right off the bat on the top, it's the rooftop spaces. So these would be the primary access points for the player.
Ok.
Then just below that, the maintenance spaces, these could be industrial or technical. Also, we can have residential. So residential could be entire building blocks, so it could be a proportion. Then after that, we've got commercial. So these could be shopping, it could be offices, it could be social. And then at the bottom, obviously, we've got lobbies. Now, these also could be access points for the player. For example, if you're inside Area 18, the player can get access to it there. And then lastly, we've got the underground. Now, these could be interesting as a connector space between buildings. So maybe you've gone in through one building, you go down, and it could bring you through to another part of a building.
Okay.
Let's start with rooftops. Now, up until now, we've largely designed our cityscapes to be more of a backdrop to the landing zone. We have the social space generally in the middle, and then the cityscape goes around it. And they've been designed to give the best composition, to be interesting to fly around, but we've not really thought about designing these buildings from the inside out. So what we're looking at here is some potential concepts for what could be interesting landing spaces that drives the architecture of the building. With landing pads, it doesn't necessarily need to be on the top of the building. It could be, halfway down or lower. So imagine, you're in the lower parts of the city,
Okay.
and then we'd open up these additional play spaces. And as you can see here, it's not just the landing pad, it's the gameplay space that goes along with it too. Now, it doesn't necessarily need to be a single building. Imagine there is a network hub that services a few different buildings. So what we're looking at here is maybe like a transit hub where the player could land, get on some transit, and then that would lead to some buildings. Okay, so maintenance spaces. So these could be really interesting in terms of player interaction. They could be dealing with the power or the maintenance of the building. And then also you could have technical spaces. So these would be more for technicians. It could deal with the data or the communications.
Sí, bueno, pero
And
eso
what
no lo
we're
vamos a
looking
hacer
at here is
nosotros.
potential some, gameplay puzzles where
eso
the
bastante
player has to work their way inside the main operation booth. So moving on to
Residential.
residential. So there's a huge amount of potential here. What we wanted to do with residential is two things. One, explore investigating the potential player housing. So with that, we want to be able to create a variety of interior layouts. And also we want to explore a variety of architectural styles. So when we're looking at potential housing layouts, we wanted something fairly modular in a way in which we could create a variety of combinations. So whether it's living spaces or habitation spaces or social spaces. And also here we're looking at, we want the players to eventually be able to populate the player-owned habitation. So you see here like a first indication of how, the sort of dressing styles that you'd be able to do. Outside of something that's fairly utilitarian, we also want to do something that could be fairly high-end. So here we're just exploring some ideas about
Mirá,
what a
mi
space
pieza
could
allá
feel
atrás del
like on a
fondo.
different architectural
Alta
style.
fiesta podemos hacer ahí.
And more generous windows, interior spaces dedicated to more than just habitation. And these would be focused on other landing zones. So imagine you come across these in Area 18, or it could be when we come to Terra. And also, like I said, it could be informing future player-owned habitation architectural sets.
Terra.
Now, outside
Terra está hablando del planeta, ¿no? Hola, Rabbit. ¿Cómo andan, chicos? Bienvenidos. Che, ¿puede ser que sea una casa para los clanes o para gente? ¿Que podamos vivir, no sé, 3 o 4 en un departamento? ¿O no?
A mí se me vino en la mente la película de Yo Robot ahí con todos los vagos atrás de la pantalla viviendo la vida en Star Citizen.
Mal.
of the living
Hola,
quarters,
pollito.
there's also the social spaces just
A ver,
outside.
está bueno, qué sé yo.
And we want these to be more than just the corridors that we're seeing in the game right now.
Vean, eso es mucho apartamento para una sola persona. Para mí que esto van a ser viviendas para, no sé, comunidad. No sé, capaz empieza ahora lo que es el rol con equipo. Capaz que los...
Habían hablado anteriormente algo de misiones en los edificios, similares a los búnkeres, pero que vos vayas a un edificio del 18, entres y mates a alguien.
Y pero esto es residencial, como para vivir ahí, por lo que estaban hablando.
No, eso sí, pero ponerle que te den la misión ahí, vos tenés que ir a matarle a un tipo adinerado, por ejemplo, en esos edificios.
Ah, también.
También habría.
Estaría bueno.
So these could be multi-layered social spaces, and these could also inform advanced traversal routes for the player to be able to get inside
Ahí está Mauro, ¿viste?
these habitation rooms. So as we're talking through various architectural styles, what you're seeing here is just a collection of ideas a collection of architectural intent to create like a palette or a mood that will inform art style
qué
and
lindo eso, boludo.
gameplay opportunities.
Qué laburo,
So outside
¿no?
of residential,
Para que
we're
dibujen.
moving into the commercial area. So what this means is it means we
Hola,
can
Uy.
look at areas that are more gameplay focused outside of player habitation. So when we're talking about these could be office blocks, these could be corporate owned. Inside here, there could be corporate wings, there could be manufacturing, there could be office spaces. And what we try to think about with these, it's more than just a flat room. There should be advanced traversal, it should be multi-tiered. So outside of the commercial offices, we've also got like restaurants and bars. So what we're looking at here is a pretty cool like skyline bar in Lowville. That could be fun. But also in restaurants, Chris always described the idea of really high-end restaurants in the game where you can get access to food choices that isn't available anywhere
Eso
else.
es Houston, ¿eh?
Sí, lo que está
So
hablando.
right at the foot of the building, we're going to start talking about the lobby. So as I said before, these are going to be access points to the player, but also we can do more than just a standard foyer that we're seeing in the game right now. So this sort of space we're seeing here is, imagine there's an underground transit network, and that transit station feeds a network of building lobbies.
Me
So
encanta
these
como,
could be
viste como lo están haciendo
a
ya,
network of building.
como que el Orville, pero tipo el hospital del Orville, que está un poco más remodelado, no es tan sucio. Porque esto es el Orville, pero viste que está un poco más lindo, está bueno, me gusta. No es tan industrial a la muerte. Te escucha muy bajo.
Y va-
¿A mí se me escucha bajo?
va-
No creo.
Va a tener sectores y sectores, porque Lorville se caracteriza por las fábricas que tiene.
Claro.
Pero seguramente va a haber un sector de la gente adinerada que va a ser así, digamos.
Está bien. Ahí se tiene que escuchar un poco mejor. Perfecto. Vamos a ver. Pero está bueno. Me gusta.
Lobbies. So these could be social spaces. These could be really good combat spaces. They could have access to mini restaurants or bars or facilities.
Hola.
And
Ahí
we're
está.
just showing that in a variety of art styles. So one's a fairly low end, one could be fairly high end, but the infrastructure is the same. So as we're exploring art style opportunities, this then drives where it would be appropriate. So some would be more appropriate in somewhere like Area 18, some would be more appropriate in somewhere like Horizon, and obviously some would be more appropriate for future landing zones like Odessa or Prime. And also when we're talking about lobbies, again, what we're trying to do is we're trying to describe multi-layer traversal spaces. So in these illustrations, you're seeing a variety of routes to then help inform the initial conversation with level design. Now, finally, we're going to talk about the underground now. This is, I think, one of the coolest spaces. So rather than just focusing on the positive axis of the building, we're going to look at the underground. Now, what this does, it means we can access a whole area of play space that doesn't need to be contained inside the building. So within a lobby, we want the player to start to traverse down into these spaces, and these could be underground transit networks. They could be abandoned.
Muy bueno, ¿no? Esa imagen.
Could be
Sí. Ahí donde se va a picar.
Ahí donde vamos a estar nosotros. Olvídate. Mira qué bueno, boludo. Está bueno. Pero bueno, insisto, boludo. Le falta. Ya que no van a poder. Ya que no podemos crear nuestra propia base. Insisto, pongan departamentos tipo en GTA. Lugares como donde podemos spawnear, tener nuestras cosas en equipo. No entiendo por qué no le dan más participación a lo que es un multicrew, multirol, multicomunidad, qué sé yo, ¿no? Está muy single player este juego últimamente.
Ya vendrá, ya vendrá.
Si no es por nosotros, el Discord y otros Discord y otras comunidades, in-game no existe, boludo. No entiendo por qué no le dan más. Sí, obviamente ya vendrá, pero...
underground
Llevan 10
transit
años.
networks. They could be
Tendría que hacer algo.
abandoned underground transit networks. This then could drive potential racing opportunities. So when we was doing this, we thought, oh, it'd be really cool. Like, what would it look like if there's an underground street race going on there? Also, there could be traversal opportunities. Like I said before, if the player wanted to go into one building, down, and then through, and then up into another building, what would that traversal network be like? Especially if we're thinking about if it's an older part of the underground of the city, maybe it's less used, you know, people have built up. That would instantly inspire a whole bunch of traversal and investigation missions there. Or maybe there's an old aqueduct or an old infrastructure underground. You know, this could be perfect for underground street racing or other racing opportunities. So in a nutshell, what we looked at is a blue sky investigation into what building interiors could be like for the game. These are essentially dungeon kits. You know, we want to be able to work on these areas in a fairly procedural manner, and we want these to be dungeon opportunities for gameplay spaces. It also will start to inform the future of player-owned habitation and the type of visuals or look and feels that could be. So this ties into a much larger initiative. So we're seeing it a little bit now with the redo of Lowville. That's turning into a much bigger cityscape. And what that means is every city in the game is ready for these building interior spaces. Now, one thing to note is the cityscapes are probably going to change a little bit. Just from an initial investigation, we found our buildings are quite small. So expect to see the skylines go through a period of transition, but that's cool because that means we're designing the inside of the buildings and then we'll redo the architecture to fit to that. So I think it's going to be super positive for the game. So just in case we're thinking it's all just blue sky concept, actually we're going to start.
Para mí, que con el reward del Orville dijeron, che, ¿y si metemos esto? El video está muy alto, le subí el volumen para que escuchen bien. Pero como no... Bueno, fue para que escuchen bien. Pero como van a meter el reward del Orville, dijeron esto, che, si metemos esto, pum, y ahí dijeron taca, taca, y lo mezclaron juntos. Por eso sacaron esta data ahora, me imagino yo.
Full production on these spaces
right at the end of this
quarter.
Me gustan las imágenes.
So, what did we learn this week? Well, we learned that much like the new underground facilities we showcased before, building interiors will be a new series of modular set pieces enabling a whole host of gameplay opportunities, from trade to exploration to combat and PvP and much more. And that, much like those new UGFs, they're going into production now, and in fact, by the time this airs, will already have started. And that the journey to 4.0 may have Pyro at its center, but it will still continue to evolve all aspects of Star Citizen and the existing persistent universe around it. Now, we'll be back with more Inside Star Citizen next week. But for our journey to 4.0, I'm Jared Huckabee, and we'll be back in about a month or so with our next big look forward. See you then.
About a month or so. ¿Estás hablando de la 3.18? Bueno, gracias a todos por escuchar, venir a ver el Insight acá conmigo y con Maurito. No se olviden de suscribirse al canal, denle like, coméntenme. Chicos, no se cuelguen, veo que se olvidan de darle like y comenten. Ven, toda la comunidad lo ve y se olvida. No cuesta nada dejar un like, un comentario y suscribirse, que me ayudan un montón para que a más personas les llegue. Entonces más personas vamos a hacer en la comunidad. Así que nada, les agradezco ese favor siempre, cada vez que subo un video. ¿Sí? Así que, bueno, Maurito, nos vemos en el próximo Insight, jueves que viene.
Jueves que viene.
Bueno, nos vemos, gente. Un abrazo. Chau, chau.